The chakras and the 7 deadly sins, from distortion to balance. There is an idea found across many traditions that human beings are not only physical, we are emotional, mental, energetic, spiritual. And for a long time, different cultures have tried to understand what moves through us, what shapes behavior, what influences choices, what creates suffering, and what leads us back to balance. In some traditions, these patterns were understood through the chakra system. In others, they were described as moral or spiritual struggles. Different language, different symbols, different teachings, but often pointing to something very similar. Not just random similarities, but coincidences. A shared meeting point, a deeper truth being noticed from different directions. Because the chakras describe centers of energy and experience within the human body. And what some spiritual traditions call the 7 deadly sins can also be understood as distortions of those same energies. Not as labels meant to shame us, but as warnings, signals, indicators of what happens when energy becomes imbalanced, disconnected, or unconscious. When crown energy becomes distorted, it can show up as pride, a separation from humility, a fixation on self-image, a need to elevate the self above growth. But beneath that distortion, the deeper need may be a healthy love of self, a grounded sense of worth that does not depend on superiority. When the third eye energy is blocked or dulled, it can show up as sloth. Not always laziness in the simplest sense, but disconnection, avoidance, mental fog, resistance to movement. And beneath that, the deeper need may be peace of mind, clarity, stillness, a mind that no longer feels overwhelmed by life. When throat energy becomes strained, it can show up as wrath, explosive reaction, harsh speech, the urge to force, punish, or overpower. But underneath that fire, there is often a longing for justice, for truth, for fairness, for something that mattered to be acknowledged and restored. When heart energy becomes distorted, it can show up as envy, comparison, resentment, the pain of seeing something in someone else and feeling separated from it. But beneath envy, there may be a deeper longing for acceptance, love of others, and the ability to recognize that another person's light does not take away your own. When solar plexus energy falls out of balance, it can show up as greed, the need to gather, control, protect, hold tighter. But underneath that, there is often a need for generosity, not just giving to others, but trusting life enough to loosen the grip of fear. When sacral energy becomes distorted, it can show up as gluttony, overconsumption, trying to fill an emptiness through excess, not just with food, but with stimulation, distraction, noise, attention, or even escape. And underneath that distortion, the deeper need may be nourishment, true nourishment, for the body, the heart, the mind, the whole self. And when root energy becomes distorted, it can show up as lust, not simply desire, but the search for connection through impulse alone, a reaching outward for something that feels like union, without fully understanding what the soul is really longing for. And beneath that, there may be a deeper need for union, not just physical closeness, but emotional, spiritual, and human connection. So when we look at these patterns this way, the conversation changes. This is no longer about judging people. It becomes about understanding energy, understanding the self, understanding that beneath many destructive patterns, there is often a wounded need, a distorted longing, or an energy asking to be seen more clearly. And that matters, Because the moment you stop seeing yourself as bad for having a reaction and start asking what that reaction is pointing to, you begin to wake up. You begin to move from unconscious patterning into awareness, from shame into understanding, from distortion into balance. This is where real spiritual growth begins, not by pretending you never struggle, not by denying the human experience, but by recognizing that you are more than your first impulse, more than your conditioning, more than your reaction. And when you begin to work with these energies consciously, something shifts. Pride can soften into self-respect. Sloth can become clarity and movement. Wrath can be refined into justice. Envy can open into love. Greed can transform into generosity. Gluttony can return to nourishment. And lust can deepen into true union. And maybe that is part of what so many traditions have been trying to tell us all along. That life is not only about what happens on the surface. There is something deeper moving underneath. A pattern, a current, an intelligence, a spiritual invitation. And when we become aware of it, we suffer less blindly. We live more consciously. We stop reacting to life as if that reaction is all we have. And we begin to participate in something greater, something more intentional, something more peaceful. Because happiness is not found in endlessly chasing impulses. And enlightenment is not found in denying our humanity. It begins when we notice what moves through us and choose to meet it with awareness. One breath, one moment, one conscious choice. If this message resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel. And you can find free downloadable resources at myreiki.net.